Hello, and welcome to the North Carolina Museum of History and the 25th Annual American Indian Heritage Celebration. Our panel today, Water is Life, Environmental Issues and Native Communities, will begin in just a moment, but we want to begin with a few notes. Remember to ask your questions in the chat, and we'll do our best to respond to them and share them with our presenters. We have many additional resources for you today about the American Indian communities here in North Carolina on our website at nc-aihc.com. We'd like to thank the following sponsors of the North Carolina Museum of History Foundation, helping to make this event possible. Let's get started. Today we have joining us Mr. Greg Jacobs, Coharie Tribal Administrator and Tribal Elder. Mr. Jacobs has long worked to restore the Coharie River for members of his tribe and other American Indians and the public. And Mr. Jacobs is going to be joining us now. We also have Dr. Ryan Emanuel, a professor in the Department of Forestry and Environmental Resources and a faculty fellow in the Center for Geospatial Analytics at NCSU. Hello, Dr. Ryan. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for hosting our session today. So this year's Water is Life session focuses on the Coharie tribe and their efforts to restore relationships with their ancestral river, the Great Coharie River. Today we're going to be listening to a recorded, curated conversation and accompanying video that Mr. Jacobs and I created together with Mr. Phillip Bell, who may be able to join us later.
Yes, thank you so much. What we're going to do now is we're going to share the video, and then we'll come back afterwards, and we'll have Phillip Bell, who's the volunteer coordinator of the Great Coharie River Initiative, joining us as well to answer your questions. So as you're watching the video, please enjoy it and stay around for the chat.
Giving thanks to such a beautiful group of people. It was almost as if we had awakened the spirit down in that river, that you could actually feel as it took its first breath that we had finally heard it, that it was needing help. And that spirit has spread through our community. We're seeing young men that they don't talk about the river as a river. They use the word our river. My name's Greg Jacobs, and I'm very honored to be the tribal administrator for the Kahari tribe, and I'd like to speak of our human resources. And when I say honored, that's giving thanks to such a beautiful group of people. I'll say just a little bit about the Kahari people, or our tribe. And we're a small tribe. We're one of the 8 recognized tribes of North Carolina. We reside here in Sampson and Harnett County, and there's about 3,500 enrolled members. I would like to say that what we don't have in numbers, we make up for in spirit, as you're going to hear from Mr. Phillip Bell.
Hi, and I'm Phillip Bell. I'm a Kahari Lumbee. My mother's Lumbee from the Prospect Red Banks area down in Robertson County, who came to Sampson County in 45, as many teachers did, to teach at East Carolina Indian School, which was one of the only schools only Indian schools in North Carolina that had a high school for Indian students. My dad was a World War II veteran who was a farmer here in the area. I'm a graduate of UNCP. Woohoo! And after 34 years, I retired and came back to work with, or not back to work, but came and Greg was tribal administrator, so I volunteered to work on a couple of projects, and one was the Great Coharie River Initiative that has just been one of the best things I've ever done in my life. The Great Coharie River is where the Kahari people got their name from, the Coharie River, and it's the Kahari River now. The river is just it's been our cornerstone for the Kahari people. If you go and look at the water, you'll see us that dark tannin water with tea colors. If you go down to the river, you'll notice the different what descriptions of the water, pretty much, or the river. On the upper end, what started the Great Coharie River Initiative has been neglected by our state and by our local government, in that the beaver population has taken over to make it where it's impassable. The land on the upper end here in part of Kahari land belongs to the state that refused access to our people. So when I began as a volunteer and we started the Great Coharie River Initiative, we asked if we could just create a navigable corridor, which we did with the assistance of our drum group, Smoky River, and a few of our local tribal members. And with that happening, just the whole world of things began to happen. But the Kahari River is a beautiful river. On the northern end, like I said, is swampy, but the farther south you move, the more like it was when I grew up. Open canopies, clean water, high banks, hard banks, just a beautiful river with plenty of fish and sights to see. Growing up, the river was open to all the people. Everyone in the community was able to go down to the river whenever they wanted to and use it. We used it for subsistence. We used it for everything. But over time, the property was sold to by the paper companies to Nature Conservancy, and then from Nature Conservancy over to the state. And the state just refused entry for anyone other than if you were in the river itself. They couldn't stop you from paddling up and down the river. So we wanted to clean it out so we could at least get down to some of the places we used to use for recreation. So we had to go through the DEQ, through natural resources and conservation. We went through different ones and finally received permission to create that navigable corridor in a section about 3 miles long. And from there, the doors began to open, and they saw that we were not here to try to take over or to harm the river, but here for to return the river back to the way it was when I grew up. I tell folks, my goal in life was to make the river the way it was so when I grew up, so my grandchildren could enjoy it, because that was, it's a special place, that cornerstone, as I mentioned, for our people.
Sampson County is almost shaped like an heart or the organ in your body. And if you look on the map, the Kahari River runs right down to through the center of Sampson County. And I often refer to it as the blood vessel that carries the lifeblood of the area here. It runs through, we're an agricultural county, one of the largest county, the largest county in North Carolina. So, and real fertile soil here. And the river is real instrumental in keeping the land healthy. And as we talk, I can smell the honeysuckles and the pine trees and the cypress and that water that looks like tea. It's a place of solitude, and it's been a stronghold for the Kahari tribe, but it's welcomed all that would come and take part of its wonderful medicine, a medicine that is free and has no side effects. One wonderful feeling was my dad. He worked hard. We were sharecroppers and had a real small farm of our own. And also he worked at Lundy Packing Company, actually a slaughterhouse, and he worked very hard to take care of his family. But one of my best memories was he'd have a week's vacation. And each day on that week's vacation, we'd get up before day, it would be dark. And we'd get our cane poles out, and he'd get us some live bait, and we would dig us some worms and go down to that river. And as a small child walking down those paths that led to the riverbanks, anticipating catching a big fish, and we would catch a big fish, and we would catch a lot of fish. So thank you for asking that question, because it stimulated for me to relive just how important and just how exciting and just how beautiful a picture it was for my dad, which his name was Amy Jacobs, and he passed away at 102. He knew it was important to spend time with his son and teach me about Mother Nature and introduce me to that river. Another story that I remember was my great grandfather. He talked about fishing and some of the hollowed out logs that maybe would be in the river, and he would hand fish, and he would run his arm up into the hollowed out place to get the fish out. Probably more often than not, it was a catfish. Sometimes it wasn't a fish, and other people would be standing around with him. So when he came out with a reptile in his hands, and when he would sling that reptile, you know, because it startled him, he would tell some funny stories about the scrambling around from the people around that were fishing with him. So then there's other stories about seining and tremendous amounts of fish. Our community would go as a group to fish, and then they would catch a lot of fish and come back to the community and have a fish fry. So it was a social place. One more area that I'll go to is the baptisms. That river is a sacred place. That's where we went to baptize those with a confession of Christianity as their faith. And sometimes incidents was happening, maybe as they were singing a hymn and they would get right to a particular part of the hymn, an incident, an accident, somebody slip off in the water or fall flat at the back, and maybe they were singing at that particular time, I am bound for the promised land. And it was sort of hilarious, but those kind of stories sort of warmed my soul as they would talk and laugh about the times spent down on the river. So it was a very healthy, beautiful place that we've all enjoyed in the past, and we want to enjoy it in the future.
Growing up in Kahari land, either, or when we were coming along, either you were a farmer, you worked at Lundee's, or you were a school teacher, one of the three. And my dad was a sharecropper. And where we farmed, the river was across the main highway that runs down through Kahari land. And the river was about a half mile away. And he would tell us, during the day, if you work hard, this afternoon we'll take off and go to the river. Well, for us, being able to take off and go to the river was an important, it was like a huge event, because the river was our recreation department. We didn't have pools to go swimming in. We didn't have basketball courts to play on. We didn't have baseball courts or whatever to play baseball with, no organized sports, but we did have the river.
I don't remember that river having so much obstructive debris when I was a young child. Excitement was going down to the downel holes where supposedly was the bigger fish, and it was named after Philip's dad. That was a lot of the places that we did the catfishing. There was a long path that we walked from the edge of the cleared land down through the canopy of the woods, the oaks and the cypress and the pines, that we could readily walk. It was clear. You could even drive part of the way and go down to the river and sit on the banks. And this is something that I miss today. It's a struggle having access to the river. Those paths are gone. They're flooded. Those cypress trees and those huge trees that I used to sleep under sometime, now they've been blown down by the frequency of the storms, and the water's backed up out of the banks, and those trails are flooded. I can't walk, especially at my age, down to the downel hole now.
Growing up in the river, Greg mentioned about the river itself, but I can remember growing up in the canopy of the river. That was the one you're talking about, changes and how our river has changed. When we grew up, we took care of the river, and back in the late 40s, and it was a good thing too, because farmers needed additional income, so they brought beavers in to supplement those farmers' income. However, over time, when PETA came along and fur trade went sour, beavers were left to do what beavers do. And the canopy in the river when we grew up was closed in. I mean, you could see a man walking 100 yards away. And now you go down there and the canopy is gone. The river is wide open.
The river, a living entity, it seems, And we really appreciate it for actually teaching us. I think it's us paying it attention. And I don't know if Phillip mentioned this earlier, but it was almost as if we had awakened the spirit down in that river that you could actually feel as it took its first breath, that we had finally heard it, that it was needing help. And that spirit has spread through our community. We're seeing young men that they don't talk about the river as a river. They use the word our river. In other words, we're responsible for its health. And I think it has awakened that principle throughout our tribe. The elders are really happy of what we're doing for the river. We're taking care of something that had taken care of them over the years. And, you know, I think the river is saying to us that your ancestors knew of my medicine. They knew just how important it is, that you're going to be a better people for helping take care of me.
We had this one girl who came down who was supposed to have a kidney transplant, and she wanted to come to the river. She'd heard about it. She wanted to visit it. She came and she had a great time, and she went back home. A few months later, I guess maybe a year or two later, she still hadn't received a kidney. She was supposed to receive one day, and something happened. She didn't get it. So she called us and asked if she could come to the river. Greg called me, said, "Can we take her on the river today?" And I said, "Sure." So we brought her down, told her to come down. We had a ball. When she came, there were tears in her eyes. When she left, she was smiling. She was happy as she could be. Well, she finally received a kidney. And so she was doing great. After a couple of months of healing, she asked if she could come one more time, and we told her to come on. And that was a glorious event for us in that she was able to share the power of the river and what it offers to those who need healing. Not only just for her, but folks suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome, folks who suffer from just anxiety. You'll see them down in the river, and they'll tell you this is a place where I can just relax and enjoy life.
I think that what we wanting to pass along to the generations, and it's going very well, even down to my granddaughter. She sits on the bank of the river sometimes, and she says, "Papa, I can see our ancestors," and it's almost as if they're telling me that they're proud of me. And tears are run from her eyes, and she speaks of speaking to the river. So another dimension has been given to our community that tells us that all of creation is connected. As human beings, we were created by the same creator that created the river and created the trees, and there's a connection and a responsibility. And for that, I'm very thankful, because it has caused our community to bond together in carrying out activities to become more self-sufficient, uh, more self-determination as to exactly what we want to do as a community, and more of a desire to be self-governing as an indigenous people. Uh, that river has aided in some mysterious way all of those principles. Um, I can't wait to see what it's going to tell us next and what the positive results is going to be. But I appreciate Phillip's passion. I think he early on was the one in the community, other than the elders that knew it before, had the ear to hear the river, and he knew what the river had to offer. And there's just no end to the importance of what it's done for a community, for you know, this little tribe that bears its name, the Kahari tribe.
Thank you so much for that beautiful video. I think that was such a wonderful way to really get all of us who are watching today out on the river to really experience it. So I think that was such a wonderful way to really share this important project with us and to teach us about what the project means both to the Kahari tribe specifically, but also how it's important to all of us. I wanted to ask Dr. Emmanuel if he could tell us a little bit about some of the ideas that come up about the watershed. What is a watershed? Why is a watershed important?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So a watershed is all of the land area that drains to a specific place on a river. So for the Great Coharie River, for example, let's say that you're interested in all the water that drains through the spot where you take out your canoes or kayaks, or where you have historically fished or gone swimming or held baptismal services. You'd be interested in what's happening in all the land area, not just the waterways, but the land as well that's draining into the river and flowing past that point, because that land area determines whether your water is clean or polluted. It determines how much water flows through at different times of the year, and all sorts of characteristics that you might care about if you use the river or rely on it for any purpose whatsoever.
Wonderful. I think that really helps us think about the whole context of it and how our actions impact the water. What we do on the land affects the water. And I know we haven't been able to have Mr. Phillip Bell join us yet. He's at something very special today. He is at UNC Pembroke for his son's graduation. So we were hoping that he'd get a chance to join in here with us, but we haven't. Maybe he'll still be able to jump on. But I did just want to point out his incredible role in the project. And I'm wondering if Mr. Jacobs, if you could talk a little bit about Mr. Bell's role in the Great Coharie River Initiative.
I will try to talk about Mr. Bell's role. It's of such magnitude that we don't have time to express it all. First of all, I think I would like to say that this project has become so popular and so successful because of Mr. Phillip's willingness to give of himself and of his time and of his spirit. Phillip has always had an ear for Mother Nature. He's been the one that left to hunt and run the river and study actually what Mother Nature has to offer, what the animals do, what the plants do, what the rivers do. And I think that in some way he has a spiritual ear that has always heard the river when maybe some of us didn't. So as this project came about by the vision of some of the elders in the community, and Phillip heard of them speaking of, what about our river? What can we do for our river? Phillip had heard it all the time and had needed some help in carrying out what the river needed. So, Phillip's heart, his spiritualism, that ear that knows that we're all connected to Mother Nature, and he knew what it would take to help us make a healthier community. He was willing to put the hard work down into the river to help it flow again, to clear the blood vessel that runs through, to run through our land. This project can't do without Phillip.
Right. And it's so clear that this is really his passion and is so connected to who he is. And to hear him talk about what the river has meant to him his whole life in the video is very beautiful. I had a couple of questions come up that very specific to the navigable corridor and how that has, opening that back up, how that has affected the river. How has the river changed now that that navigable corridor has opened up?
Okay, I'll speak on it and maybe you can follow up, Ryan. First of all, we're getting input from community residents that live along the river. So let's say, for instance, between the flooding of Hurricane Matthew and Hurricane Florence, some of the individuals came and said that they saw that the amount of flooding, how far the water came up on their land, that there was a noticeable difference between Matthew and Florence, and how quick it receded. It came across the bridge, across 421, across the road, and it receded in like a day in Hurricane Florence. That was not the case in the earlier storm of Matthew. So opening up the navigable corridor there seems to help control some of these this flooding caused by, I guess, climate change, the frequency of the storms. So we were glad to hear that the residents of Sampson County was seeing a difference, and it made us know that it was reality what we were trying to do. The second thing is that so much medicine being discovered down in the river, and the river wasn't being very well used because it did not have a navigable corridor, and the young people and the seniors were not going down to the river. It had about turned into a swamp. Thousands of people are kayaking the Kahari River today, and all the rivers of Sampson County that we're helping to clean out. So the river's not lonesome anymore. Sometimes we give it a traffic jam down in there. We've got so many, and people are coming from all over, out of the urban areas. And one of the wonderful things I like is that when my friends from other tribal areas come and we all join together and go down the river, and the intertribal collaboration, when families that are maybe having problems that exist within their family are using the river to take mom, dad, son, nieces, nephews, they get together as a family, and they seem to find it as a place of solitude that they can speak and try to find solution to family problems. But it really does my heart good to know that the river has been given back to a people that need it, and it has so much to offer. We're still discovering what that river has to offer, but we do know that it's made our community, it's made Sampson County a healthier place. Ryan?
I would just like to add to that the rivers of this part of the world have been used as navigation ways for thousands of years. So to think that rivers are untouched by humans and that there is some unaltered state in which they exist, and when we think about restoration and conservation, we often think about some mythical pristine state. But it's important to remember that, especially in the Southeast, where overland travel was traditionally very difficult in some areas, that Native peoples have long managed waterways to keep them open and navigable by small crafts very similar to the canoes and kayaks that Greg and Phillip take people down the river in today. I think there are a lot of open scientific questions about the interactions between humans and rivers, and how that influence the shape and structure of riverbeds and river reaches through time. But it is important to remember that there is a very long history, perhaps thousands of years, of humans managing and caretaking these waterways, because those were their highways.
Mhm. Is there something that you would recommend for other communities that are looking to take better care of their rivers, what they can do?
Ryan?
You need a champion like Phillip. That's as an observer and a longtime friend and partner with Greg and Phillip. I've seen that having a passionate champion really makes a difference. And not to put it all on one person, you can organize this in a way that that creates a group of people who are dedicated to this. But without that dedicated person or group of people, it's really hard to get something like this off the ground. And I think the Coharie people have a gem of a resource in Phillip because of his love and passion. And just like Greg said in the recording, that Phillip was one of the people who was able to hear the river's call along with the elders, but he had the time and energy to get out on the water and try to make that vision come to fruition.
I think you hit it just right, Ryan. I found out as tribal administrator, and which I'm very honored to be for such beautiful people, as I said in the video. But from our community gardens and the various projects that we go, I've been fortunate, I guess, to come across these passions. And if you can recognize that passion within your community, and sometimes they're just waiting to have the opportunity and the tools to do great works in the community. And I think that's what happened with Phillip. Phillip's not doing anything as a volunteer that he didn't want to do years and years ago. But it just so happened that Creator made this connection that that put the passion and the resource together to make it happen, and it works beautifully.
And another thing that Phillip has done, and correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, but he has also worked really hard to energize young people and get them interested in taking up the mantle of this work and carrying it on into future generations.
Our desire, and Phillip sees it, is to first of all to provide a resource of medicine and therapy for the younger generations and to keep them connected with the indigenous knowledge that our ancestors had of just what that river had. So his emphasis now is to connect our young with that river. That river is going to give them an economic opportunity to supplement their income in the form of tourism and that kind of thing. And not only that, it's going to give them the common sense approach to their expanded educational opportunity and their technical talents to be, they're going to be super in the future. And Phillip places great emphasis on introducing the river to our young, and then the river does the rest. They become responsible and they realize that it is their responsibility, as well as I have.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite parts of the video is when you talk about your granddaughter, Mr. Jacobs, and her connection and how she feels that her ancestors are speaking to her from the river. And I felt that you can almost hearing you talk about her, you can picture her sitting there by the river. And I think that that's something that's so important. Another aspect of the video that I really was interested in was this idea of the walking access to get to the river and how the paths had been flooded and the canopy had changed. And you mentioned earlier in our discussion about elders finding it very difficult to get to the river. Is that something that has changed now, that there are parts of access for your community where they can really get to the river much easier now? And how do those paths look today?
That is something that is changing slowly, but one aspect that we built into the Great Coharie River Initiative is that our elders, we're losing them at such a great rate, and they have a desire to go back down to that river. Some of them haven't been in years and years, and we have been afforded the opportunity to purchase some access points, some of the traditional points that we used to go in the river years and years ago. That was very exciting for the community. And we are in the process of, yes, these are some areas that there is a path that you can get to the river, that we can actually transport them to the river. And we're building picnic areas that they can actually go, and we can have community gatherings down by the river, and they can feel the excitement that they felt when they were children. The very one elder that came to me and says, when I became tribal administrator, she looked at me very seriously. She said, "Greg, isn't there something we can do about our river?" And at that time I hadn't heard the river, not the way I should have. And it brought me back to just how important that river was to me in the youth. And she turned into her childhood. She was at my sister's house. Both of them are over in their 85, 88. And I saw them turn back into the children. They were enjoying something that made their heart warm. They were excited, and it was so cute just to see them. Both of them were talking at one time. It's very essential that we take care of our elders and afford them a quality of life. And that river is a part of that quality of life for them to be able to visit and remember the good days and smile and laugh and their hearts be warm. So that is an aspect that we have built into the Kahari River experience. We're going to have them a place that we can transport them down and they can sit there in their chairs and they can view that river and they can remember their youth.
Wonderful. And so another thing that you said that I hadn't really thought about was this idea of the youth having possible economic opportunities coming out of it and ecotourism. Are there any plans in place right now?
Yes, ma'am. Creator has spoken and we have acted. So in the past, we've taken so many people from across the state, hundreds, and I would say thousands of people free of charge down the river. Actually, our desire is to introduce the world back to what Mother Nature has to offer, the good medicine that Mother Nature has to offer. Many of those, well, all of those people were free of charge, but we come to look at the economic development of our community, which there's a lot of poverty within our community. And these young men coming up with families, they need alternative ways to expand their economic base. And as families came from the Triangle area and other tribal groups, we saw that they were willing to pay for a day's worth of experience to realize, the Kahari culture, to take a ride down the Gohari River and hear the history with indigenous guides. And we also provided them with some of the wonderful foods that our cooks in the community could do. So we found out that that was a sellable combination. They were more than happy to, donate financially to such an experience for them and their families. So yeah, we're developing a tourism program. COVID stopped that. It would have really been kicked off good this year. We had paid tourism, tours down the river for April, into May, into July that had to be canceled because of COVID. But in the future, we hope that
Yes.
it will be a viable economic situation for the Kahari tribe and all the citizens of Sampson County.
Wonderful. Is there a resource, a website that people could go to, people who are watching here today, who want to both support the Great Coharie River Initiative financially and who would be interested in doing river trips in the spring? Where should we send people?
Okay. I'm a Facebook.
And sorry to spring that on you. I didn't ask you that earlier.
KahariTribe.org is the website of our tribe. If they could make some comments there, I think there's a PayPal set up there that actual donations could come to. And we would really appreciate that. For anybody that knows me, knows that I'm a Facebook. I don't know. I'm on Facebook quite often. I'll just put it that way. But they can contact me. I will contact them back. And we are en route to having a Facebook page and setting up a website that specifically is all about the Kahari River Initiative.
Wonderful. So people should definitely be keeping their eye on that. And we've shared in the chat that link. We also have on our resources page on the museum's website where you can get to that as well. And so we've got just a couple more minutes here. And so what I'd love to do is I'd love to hear sort of some final words on the project from both of you today, and what you'd like people who are listening to take away from this experience this morning.
I can jump in and then give Greg the last word. When we think about protecting water resources in North Carolina or elsewhere, we often focus on protecting water because it's a commodity that we need to drink and to irrigate crops, and we need clean water for life. That is unquestionable, and I acknowledge that, and I think it's very important. One thing that the Great Coharie River Initiative teaches us is that water also creates these critically important landscapes and waterscapes here in the form of the Great Coharie River itself that helps to inform the cultures and the identities of indigenous peoples. And so while today we're not drinking water out of the Coharie River, we're not using it to irrigate crops, but it is a powerful force in the maintenance of culture for Coharie people, and in the ways that they share that culture with others. And so I think when we think about the importance of water, we have to think beyond water as something that we drink. As important as that is, we have to remember that water is also a cultural element, not just to indigenous peoples, but to people all over the world. And we need to think about how that fits into our concept of the importance of water in our world.
Thank you, Dr. Emanuel. That's wonderful. And Mr. Jacobs, I know you've talked so beautifully with us today, and I think that I would love for you to share a little bit more with us about what you see for the future, what you'd like to see not just your granddaughter, but all the children who are yet to come, our future generations.
Yeah, if I talked about just one specific thing, there's many different things, but I would put emphasis on the spiritualism. And when I say, and I often refer to the Kahari tribe, I think the one specific thing about us that makes us who we are is our spiritualism. And by saying spiritualism, I'm saying the belief in a power greater than our own that makes mysteriously things happen around us and makes us be successful, gives us peace of mind, makes us happy, it keeps our soul feeling good. And I think that one thing that River is teaching me and teaching my granddaughter, and will teach anybody that pursues taking advantage of the medicine that it has to offer, is that the same creator that created me created that river, and it created the trees and all the flowers and all the animals. And I think for us to realize that connection makes us all brothers and sisters. We learn from each other. We need from each other to make this a more healthy world. And I think it makes us healthier people when we make that connection that we're all one under the creator. I think you'll find that void that we may consider as we go through life, that empty hole inside becomes to fill up, and the circle becomes completed, and you're a more satisfied person. So there is a lot to learn. There is a good place out in Mother Nature to connect the Creator with truth and what really matters into this world. I think as a society as a whole, that maybe sometimes we look in the wrong places for this satisfaction. But the solitude and the commune with the Creator out in Mother Nature is a very wonderful thing. And I hope that all youth of any race would learn that Mother Nature be an outdoor classroom. I hope that in the future that we can expand specifically the economic base of the Kahari people by realizing that the Creator gave us a vehicle that could actually supplement your income as you develop businesses serving other people that's looking to have these wonderful experiences, such as being introduced to the Great Coharie River. Medicine. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Good.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's beautiful, Mr. Jacobs. I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you have something else?
The medicine of the river is free of charge and it don't have any ill side effects. You can probably cut down on some of your medicine bills if you're partake of that. The physical exercise is wonderful. The fresh, clean air out there. It's just a healthy scenario that I hope everybody discovers.
I think that's perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you both being here with us today, sharing this beautiful video, and I think those are wonderful words to carry us through. And I know I'm looking forward to spending some time on the river
You got
myself.
an open invitation.
Thank you both. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you both so much, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So thank you, everybody that's been